welcome to this panel, the first conversation between more than 3 people for the project Needle Drop, Tattooing Meets Club Culture. Thanks for being here. May you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you for having me. I'm Olivia Mendez. I am French, based in Berlin, DJ. I've been playing music for probably around 8-9 years. And 3 years before that, I was promoting events, and I was a journalist based in Lyon, in France. And in 2015, I moved to Berlin and started to play more as a DJ. I'm also a founder of a FLINTA collective called KONVENT, which is focusing on reinvestigating and elevating the discourse on contemporary feminism through art, visual installation, and I'm also running a label called Dusting Grooves. It's a fresh project that is based on techno music, the broad genre of techno music, and yeah.
With a very successful first release of
Zevda, yeah, which was a very good takeoff, and I'm very excited about the upcoming ones coming on the label.
You had a special cover as well. Do you want to talk about it?
I can, yes. It's a cover with augmented reality, and I don't think I've seen this before in the scene. Having a cover where through your phone you have an animation, a moving animation on it. And I wanted to combine the technology of nowadays with a craft that is the old craft of making vinyls. And I'm trying to combine visual arts with music as well.
Very successful. I really liked it. I've never seen this before. Kyle.
I'm Kyle Geiger from Indiana in the US, but I've lived in Berlin for 12 years. So, that means I can know German enough to get stressed out when the Finanzamt sends me a letter, but not good enough to fully understand that it's no big deal. And I've been DJing for over half my life. I'm pretty old, and they produce music, run a channel on Twitch, if any of you are gamers out there, where I'm basically inviting people into my studio when I'm working by myself to see that I feel like everything in techno has become more and more abbreviated in a very long format. And so we're trying to compress these 3 to 4 hour segments into 15-second video clips. And my goal is to be educational, teach people how to produce, and they can come in and ask questions when I'm banging my head against the desk working on music. But also to kind of maybe reclaim people's attention spans on seeing the more mundane aspects of music creation and DJing, going through promos online and stuff like that. And yeah, so that's kind of an abbreviated thing of what I do.
My name is Katty Lange. I'm booking agent and artist manager. I have a booking agency together with 3 partners. Have been working in the industry for 20 years, worked at the record label, have a band from Detroit that I manage, aside of Triangle. And did a lot of things, worked in nightclubs, and have been living here for over 20 years. And feel that, gained a lot of experience. I teach in a music university. I think it's very nice to give the knowledge to the next generation. I feel this is important, especially these days. I'm very happy to be here and have an exchange with you.
Thanks a lot for coming. So the theme today is the relationships within artists and their management, like in our case, the booking. And I would like to start about my first question. What are the key ingredients for a successful relationship between an artist and his or her booker?
Transparency, trust. I feel this is essential. a mutual understanding about like creative approaches. I think if you understand each other and you understand that you have to work together to achieve something and set goals together, I feel it can be successful. And communication is absolutely essential to grow and create something together, because this is what it's essentially are. You create something together for the audience, for somebody else, maybe for the artist, maybe for the next generation, or for just a very moment for the audience.
Okay.
Yeah, I think transparency is a big thing, and not necessarily transparency with, where's my money, but transparency in the form of laying out expectations for what both as an agent and the artist, what their roles are. There's a huge, and what I see is a huge disconnect between expectations of what an agent might or might not do and what an artist should or shouldn't do. And then there's this irreconcilable gap a lot of times with bad transparency of expectations, that the artist thinks that the agent should be doing all that stuff and the agent thinks that the artist should be doing all that stuff, and then it can lead to some frustrations that could be prevented with transparency.
You've done your bookings on your own for quite a long time. You're back into an agency right now.
Yeah.
What brought you back to an agent?
Kids. You have to give up a little control of your life, believe it or not, when you have kids. But that's really it. I don't want to sell myself short. I don't think I'm have a high enough profile as an artist to necessarily facilitate a lot of incoming requests. So there's a lot of proactivity that needs to be done, and that can really actually fall much more on an artist than an agent. And depending on the agent, I guess maybe you have some things to say about that. But I also think it's harder to tell me no than to tell my agent no when I contact a promoter maybe. But I also really enjoyed the relational side of dealing with promoters. And I've never, I think in 20 years of DJing, I've been stiffed once on a gig. It's billed as my birthday party, which makes it interesting. But I've been lucky, and I haven't had anybody that's really been taking advantage of me. Maybe I'm just naive, but so I had to release control by having kids to have somebody else do it that has time to do that.
Olivia?
Well, I think, Katty, you did a nice nutshell about how the relationship should be. I wanted to point out again about the trust and the way you feel comfortable to communicate with the person who represents you. You really need to be in a safe space and safe place, and being able to share your concern without the fear of judgment. I think it's quite important. Also, it's important to really feel that the person is resonating with your artistic value, your artistic identity. And you also need to respect their expertise in the field and trust them, because when they represent you, you don't have that much control on that. And that's why, as you say, communication is quite important, and being consistent in it is the key to make a relationship growing in the right way.
Yeah, I think it takes time, because it's basically like a relationship. You meet, you get to know each other, you have to understand like mutual values, and then eventually, you have to build trust. It's nothing that happens from one day to another. But like if you click instantly, that's great. But sometimes it takes a little bit more time. So, like you don't. Sometimes you date someone and then you just like it doesn't work, but sometimes it takes time to grow together. And then after a while, usually after 6 to 12 months, that's a usual time where you could say, I feel really comfortable, or maybe not. But before that, I feel it's, if you have a good feeling, then it takes that time to really grow together and have built that trust.
Yeah, and also in the first place, also trying to understand together the industry challenges and be on the same page on that and what insight both sides have, I guess. And then it can become, as you say, personal and...
Right.
Next to time, what are the other factors that help to build up that trust?
Well, I think you really need to talk a lot. You need to see, from my perspective, the artist performing very often, because just one time is not representative of like different situations. So I'd like to go as much as possible, as often as possible with the artist and experience together their performance, because the experience, if you have moments together and if you maybe sometimes have success together, then it just like motivates both sides and it builds that relationship that you think you can share. You can laugh together, maybe you get stressed together and you get to know each other. So if I travel with the artist and then I know how they react in certain situations, I feel maybe I can put together a better strategy, or I can, somebody that is rather sensitive, be more understanding about like their personality, which is something extremely important when working with artists. And I think if you build that experience together, then you build automatically the trust, because the artist knows you care about them and the career, and the other way around also.
How often and how do you meet and talk about all this? Is like call, weekly meetings? How does that work?
Whenever possible. Like for some it's different. It's different with every artist that we represent, because every relationship with them is differently. But some like to have a call every week, some every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. After a while, maybe it's not that necessary, because you have found a way of working together that has a trust level, and then you see each other every couple of months if the artist is in the same city. Like there's so many different variables too that there's no, in my opinion, no structure how it has to be.
Olivia, your booker is in Rotterdam, if I'm not wrong. How do you...
So with the agency, they have Slack, but I use Messenger. So that's an example of how, we sometimes you do things differently, but it's very available. And what I find important is also trying to appreciate his time, because over a weekend, if there's a lot of artists playing from the same roster and some artists have some issues, you really have to respect their availability. And even if during the week we are communicating a lot, if I have concerns, you will always be available to talk to me. I will, if over a weekend there is something I cannot sort out, I will think twice before contacting him, because I also respect his availability. And you have to be mindful about each other's time, I think.
And how would you describe the precise role of an agent in your career as an artist? Kyle.
I think the thing, and maybe it was in the questions, I think a lot of times people want their agent to be a manager, and they have these expectations as artists that the agent should be playing more the role of a manager, and that's the source of frustrations when you meet with artists, every artist is talking about, I don't know about, not. It's just what we do. We're just grumps by nature, and we sit and talk about these things. But a lot of times, these frustrations are a result of expectations where you're wanting your agent to be something that they're not. And some agents play more of a management role, I think. But if you want that thing, then you need to have clear expectations as to what is the person just taking care of your logistics, booking your flights, booking your hotels, making sure that champagne is chilled to the perfect temperature behind the DJ booth.
Or let's start about the brand of champagne.
Yeah, it's a sore subject. Yeah, no. But from a management perspective, like getting releases, remixes, interviews, press, doing stuff like that, that's a really different role, and you need to know where your agent and stands with how much management they're doing and how much just strictly agency work they're doing. So maybe Katty would have more insight on that.
I think in first position, the agent's role is to pull the artist's creativity. So to make them comfortable in to feel they can, or maybe even, show new avenues and then explore them together, because maybe sometimes we know other things than the artists know because we have a different input with talking to promoters or, even talking within the agency to other agents and seeing what type of projects somebody does or what's even possible. And I feel that's one of the main points of the role of an agent to represent that for me personally, to strategize that. I think that's important and give input and and then eventually, of course, transform this into bookings and negotiate like some fees, of course. But I think that's more important than just like filling up the calendar because, okay, in short, building a sustainable career.
Yeah, setting short-term goals and long-term ones. Having someone who has a knowledge of the scene, who has a good contact with the promoters, a person who knows what are the trends, what are the demands according to the kind of music you're playing as well, and being able to advise you of where would be the right place for you to perform in first place that could open opportunities to play in other places. So it's like, setting strategies together for sure. And something we didn't say, but like also the legal protection, the fact that a booker has a better knowledge than me into administration and how to protect my interests. So that's something that's quite important in the scene for not just to be protected. Yeah, especially these days when like the industry has become more professional and there's a lot of different tax laws and something that we should advise the artists. There was something else I wanted to say. Slipped my mind. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Sorry. And of course, sometimes also a reality check. So we, that comes back to the point of transparency. Sometimes expectations that we have, or that we set together, maybe in the beginning of the year, set a strategy, and maybe sometimes you understand it's not exactly that possible that way. And I feel that's very important to. Feedback from both sides, and then maybe be flexible and rearrange those goals.
And to attain all these goals, how do you negotiate all these bookings, the deals, and the contracts? How does that part of the job work?
Can you repeat, sorry?
To reach all these goals, how does that part of the work you go with all the bookings, the deals, and the contracts? Like you said that there is a lot of development in the scene going on, especially since it became, like we call it nowadays, the business techno side of it, like it reached the mainstream? How did that evolve?
Yeah, I guess something that you have to do is to be, to inform yourself of the next trend, or discuss if that's something that you want to do, and also feedback the artist. For example, like let's say we have an idea of what we want to do, but then this may need some actions from the artist that maybe they are not comfortable with. So it's something that I think we have to. It's part of the job. It's research. So before I go and present some sort of strategy, I have to sit down and see who plays there and what do I think is going to happen in the next year, which is not necessarily the case that it's going to happen like that. But a strategy is something that, is an idea that you put together. And like I said, within the year, sometimes you have to be flexible because things change very quickly these days. And then it's the job of an agent to reach out to promoters or take requests and filter these and see if that's something that is appropriate for the artist and that matches what the values of the artist and what was discussed. And then eventually you present it to them and discuss together if that's something they feel comfortable with, because that's the most important. The comfort for both sides and for the promoter also to perform.
About this trend, social media plays a huge part in all this. How do you see it and like check on it over your 3 careers? What is your opinion about what's happening? Because it's a powerful tool nowadays, but it's also like, let's call it as it is, a pain in the ass for all of us as artists. So because like the trendy stuff is like working a lot, but like for how long? What's the secret to be that it works on the long term?
Consistency, diversify yourself, like bring diversify content, remaining authentic to yourself, trying to bring knowledge and opening debate on some topics that are meaningful to you. I think that could be an example of something that is interesting to talk about on social medias. It's also a good way to give credit to people and being in a way more politically correct, which means when you do an appreciation post, when you play somewhere, you're also giving credit to the club. You can help them like pushing up their reputation or being connected to other venues who have like another, like a musical association, which means like they have an artistic direction that is similar. So I think social media can also be a very nice bridge to connect all of these structures together and make also us more responsible and giving credit to people. I think it's the good side of these platforms.
I mean, that's how we met.
Yes, indeed.
Twitch?
Twitch is much more like it's such a long. I don't even think that Twitch and things like Instagram are in the same. They're kind of 2 parallel universes. Apart from when you're mentioning on Instagram that you're going to be on Twitch or something like that. My social media philosophy is like, do what allows you. You've got to be present on there, but you can also say that you're going to do what allows you to sleep at night. And that's different for everybody. Like I'm sure that someone in this room would maybe look at my social media and find it super cringe or something like that, and that's fine. But you have to be able to put yourself out there. I mean, for me, there's always these like unicorns that I call them, and they're always the same names that come up where, Devious One doesn't have a social media. Helena Huff doesn't have a social media. It's like, well, we named the same 5 people. So if you want to be the 6th, then go for it. But I think your chances would be probably improved if you were willing to take the dive into that and do it in a way that feels genuine to you or accomplishes what you want as a tool. Like, I mean, I can't imagine being a chef at a restaurant and being like, I just want to cook food. I don't want to mess with Google, or I don't want to mess with food bloggers or something like that. It's like, well, there's exceptions, but I don't think that that's like the most likely path of, and so there's ways. You don't have to just sit there and post selfies if you don't want to, and if you do want to, go for it. I don't think it's as much the devil that we've sometimes make it out to be. Could be wrong though.
It can also be a source of anxiety. Sometimes. There's so many parameters that you don't have control. It's so intangible, but like you make a post and like maybe there's a post that works better than another one, and you're gonna think about many things, like maybe it's the time, maybe it's the content, maybe it's the picture that they didn't make it work. And sometimes it's posts that are quite meaningful to you, and sometimes it's a source of anxiety, and it's important to do a step back and be like, okay, whatever, like I just posted it, now it's done, I cannot change it anyway. And understanding that you don't have full control of the algorithm, and there's a lot of parameters that you cannot control, but being consistent is also a way to just pushing your message. And something that I wanted to add, social media also create a proper engagement with your fan base, you know. A lot of people who are part of your community who resonate with your music will contact you, and I never had any issue on my side to contact an artist that is well established and not getting any answer. So I think it's also getting like the community even closer to each other, and also being able to connect with some artists who are not necessarily based in Berlin, and sharing music, references. And so I think it's kind of getting the scene a bit closer. Right?
Yeah, I mean, and I have to say that, of course, we can talk about the negatives of social media, but it used to be like I started touring in 2008. And when you released a record, you basically had to wait in line for Resident Advisor to like you. If I mean, like that's, and that's not a disparaging thing about Resident Advisor if they're listening, but that's just kind of the way it was. You needed these like 3 or 4 different press outlets to take a hold of it, and that's how people found out about your music or whatever you were doing. And now it's really cool to see. I think that the younger generation's much better at social media than I am, but I celebrate the fact that younger people are able to bypass these media outlets and create a path for themselves. Like people that never had any kind of big explosion of success or hype from one of the press outlets are really doing really good for themselves right now. And I credit social media as a big part of that.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday about like ticket sales in certain countries and areas, and you know, like why so many young people come and how do they learn about like the event. And so we came to the conclusion that this is just because like there's so much more accessibility to events. Where do they happen? You know, like one follows the other, and you follow also, and you learn much quicker about like artists. And of course, this also creates a much faster success. How sustainable that is another question, but this is a trend. And I mean, I can't tell the artist what's right or wrong as long as they feel comfortable with what they do. I think it's important. I don't use it for myself.
What about streaming? What does streaming play as a role in the industry nowadays?
Well, it gives the opportunity for some people who are not based in Europe, for instance, or based in your city to listen to your music. It's a very strange concept because as an artist, when you play in front of a camera, everything is kind of sterilized. There's no energy to get, so it's pretty stressful for an artist to perform in front of a camera. I mean, for me, it's very stressful because I need to bring something, a kind of energy, but I don't have anything in exchange. So you really feel like you're in a sterilized environment, but it for sure gonna expand your reach through different countries because now with the internet, everyone can listen to it. But yeah.
A new format came with Corona, is the video format, also like with platforms like her. How did that influence your careers?
It did have a good influence, actually, this platform. Even if it's a big stress for the artist to play there, because if this is not your day and you're not performing correctly, some artists can really have like big backlash and be cancelled. So I think there is a good side of doing streamings, but there are also bad sides, because I think the most important also is the live performance, and I'm a live person. I'm more into like you go there, you get your experience, and try not to necessarily also read what is going on from other platforms of what happened in the parties when the DJ did this and this. I think it's like I'm more into like having a live experience with an audience, but the streaming is a good way and a good door to open an opportunity for someone to discover you and be like, okay, then that person, I want to see that person live. But yeah.
So that's an important piece for your portfolio. Does that play a role, like in your eyes, as an agent?
I mean, it helps us to find new talents sometimes. And if you have artists that just start and maybe have not such an established career yet, sometimes it's a good tool in communication with promoters. If it turns out good to the satisfaction of the artist, and it can be a useful tool. I'd say I still think that, I mean, during the pandemic, it was important so the artist could perform and they could receive some feedback. I do think that it was a little bit too much, maybe, and I'm happy it's over, because eventually nobody really monetized from it, and it was I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not just about the money, but it's about like educating the audience also to go and pay to see the artist performing, and nothing is comparable with a live performance, and but it's useful and it's helpful in communication with promoters.
It brought also some diversity as well, so many different queer communities, and it was very gender balanced, our platform. So it really brought more FLINTA artists and more queer, more minorities being able to express themselves. So I think that was also a good side, good point.
And I think I come from, I said I'm from Indiana, and it's not a booming techno community there. And Berlin's really a bubble with accessibility to techno. I don't know where everybody in the room's from, but I lived on, like, the first 10 years of me discovering techno, and my musical inspiration came almost exclusively through downloading mix sets, downloading stuff. Like, if there was a video streaming platform of people playing in a bathroom, it's actually a kitchen. But I would have shit myself, thinking about this, having that access to every day after you come home from your university classes or whatever, you could turn that on. And I think what we sometimes see as like a saturation, we forget that there's people in very remote places that love techno as well, and that don't have access to it. And so it's a real valuable thing for me because of I didn't come from a big city. I didn't have record stores in my backyard that I could learn about new artists from, and it was all through SoulSeek, downloading when I Love Techno, the big party in Ghent every year came out. You're like, yep, okay, now I can go download more mix sets, you know, and that was super important to feed that. So I'm pro streaming. I might be biased, but.
What strategies do you adapt to make your success happen with social media and streaming? How does that work? Like to promote your sound online? Just don't?
I mean, for mixes and streamings, I think it's good, especially now that we're back on touring, that you don't have too many. Just really some that you feel really comfortable with as an artist. I think that's a strategy. So every 3 months, depending on what type of artist you are, and which step of your career you are. I think every 3 months, if you release a mix, it's great from like different platforms, from different occasions, from live studio mixes, like, you know, sometimes maybe even collaborations can be really nice. So I feel that's what you can use social media for, even to expose something maybe unexpected that you want to try out and see how it works. I think that's probably the most I could give strategies for social media.
As you say, musical association is quite important because you can also connect two different audiences together. For instance, not behind the scenes stories, but kind of when you are like sharing a story where you are making music with a friend and this person is making the same style, and people from behind the screen will make a connection, a musical association. And I think it can be very helpful. Giving an example, you are a promoter, you want to book one artist, the artist is not available, but then you saw that this artist is hanging out a lot with this other person. You will make a connection and you will be like, okay, well, maybe I will try to book that person because they seem to be well associated, and it will make sense to book that person instead. Association I think is good, or collaboration with some artist for making tracks. Just a good way to connect to like different audiences, and
maybe even differently than like many years ago, you can just like release a track that you produce together without like making a big commitment and going to a record label and have a deal. You just drop it and see the reactions of the audience and see if people like it or not, and if you like it, and if so, you can commit and maybe continue this collaboration.
And how do you find a good balance between the artistic freedom and the commercial success?
I'm not good at emulating things. So by the time I figured out how to emulate something that's not like something that, it's usually something that I feel like is missing. I always say I'm a DJ first and producer second, but I find myself producing music that I feel is absent from my DJ sets that I would like to hear more of. And so I've never really been able to, I've not been good at commercial success, not because I'm some rebel or anything like that. It's more that for me, it's better if I just stay put with what I do. I mean, always have your ear to the ground on what's happening around you and be aware of that, but also be comfortable and confident enough to know that waves come. I mean, I remember Robert Hood was, at a time, nobody was talking about Robert Hood between when he first like blew up in the Detroit scene, and then there was this crazy resurgence of Robert Hood, and now he's like back to God status. So if this type of wave can happen to a Ben Sims or a Robert Hood, then I don't think anybody should be discouraged when the wave's not, their artistic expression isn't being received with the wave of what people want. And for me, I don't think it's the best advice career-wise, but I think it's much more fulfilling for me to just stay put and understand that when you're not in the seasons where you're not in demand, it's not always personal. It's not that people don't hate you or anything like that, and just keep doing what you believe in, and eventually those waves will hopefully line up with what you're doing.
What do you tell your artists?
I think the question is, what is commercial to us? I mean, maybe what is commercial to me is different to you guys. So I think it's hard to say, because I feel, I mean, we all make money with that. So is that already commercial? Is it commercial if you play in a club or in a big festival that has 3,000 people? Is it commercial when it's on social media? Or like it's so difficult to define exactly what it is, at least to me. I think it's more about how authentic somebody is with what they do. Yeah, and even if like to someone that might seem commercial, but maybe it's exactly what they feel in this very moment, I find it okay. Yeah.
You can even combine both. I think sometimes you can start from a niche market, and then little by little, you will open up to a bigger audience. As Katty said, authenticity is quite important. I think you just have to remember your vision, your artistic value, your artistic identity, and trying to be true to yourself. You can maybe do some compromises. I think it's all about making some compromise. There are, for me, definitely some event I will never see myself into, but there are some others where I'm like, okay, it's not entirely the style that I'm playing, but I still can see myself there, and I think I will try to stick to my style, but making it a bit more accessible to reach another audience. And I think it's also a good thing, because it will diversify the people who's gonna follow you, and also open a door to those who never heard that kind of sound before. And I think sometimes it's good to go on a mission, I would say.
I mean, eventually, it's for the audience. I mean, it's also for yourself, but it's for the people in the audience. And if there's like 10,000 people, and maybe 3 or 4 in the audience have that moment for themselves, then maybe it's worth doing a more commercial event, because maybe they go back and, they start listening to your music, and, like they eventually go a different, it opens their horizon in terms of music, and maybe, start listening to something else. And you never really know, but I feel it's for the audience, and sometimes also depending on maybe who you play with, but it can be inspiring for everyone. And I think as long as you feel comfortable with what you do and you stand to that decision, or maybe you come back and you say, that wasn't really mine, I feel that's good to do.
Yeah, and I think the commercial, like you said, like, you have people saying, "Oh, that's a commercial sound." It's like, well, they sold 500 copies of a record versus 350. Like this is not being, okay, there's the BBC and stuff like this, but this is not taking the stage at a Woodstock or a Coachella on the main stage. But the whole business techno phrase is always funny, because it was birthed by people irritated by business techno, which kept them from being able to better make a business out of their techno. I mean, that's ultimately what it was, is that it was taking over a lot of the stages and a lot of stuff like this, and we all want to make a business out of our techno, you know.
Get it from your art, and that's amazing as an artist. Like,
yeah,
it should be it's stupid like to say like, hey, because at the end, like if you're against the commercial part, like you're saying like, I do not want to make money from what I love.
Yeah, I mean, you of course, if you're from a niche, you have like some financial limitation, but I also believe that you also have more artistic freedom, because also getting into the commercial means you also need to adapt yourself. And imagine you are like into this commercial scene and the trend is changing. If you want to stick to the commercial scene, then you're going to have to fastly adapt your style to the new trends. And I think being in a niche means you are much more connected to your community, because it's a smaller cell, and I do believe that you have much more artistic freedom, because you are just linked to one particular group of people. Does it make sense what I say?
It does.
Yeah, it makes sense. And sometimes, I mean, sometimes success. Again, this is the question: what does success mean to me? What do I want from a career? And I believe if you don't really aim for like to become more commercial, probably it doesn't happen, because maybe you don't go to a major booking agency, or maybe you don't have a major label, you know. So you have like different priorities. I mean, I worked for many years at Tresor Records and in the nightclub. You could say, okay, like I went there for passion, but eventually everyone has to make money, and it becomes a business, because otherwise we can't produce music if we don't sell the music, because we need to pay for it. And where does it start and where does it end? Like, it's a very personal question, I think.
But like what the artistic legacy you want to envision.
Yeah, and I think also the whole careerism in arts does skew artistic decisions. And I think that we maybe are too upset. I mean, before I moved to Europe, and my work visa just only allowed me to do music, and I definitely would have liked to have had a part-time job or something like that. I used to be a substitute school teacher, a football referee, soccer, whatever you want to call it, and that made it feel like I could always tell any source of income to fuck off. And I think that that's like the best artistic thing that you can have, is that freedom to say fuck off. And I think that there's I'm not trying to be like harsh about it, but like I think that when you have that ability to say fuck you in music, there's this drive that comes, and the ability to do something that's not necessarily catching at that moment, and the stuff, the people that are doing huge things like Robert Hood, I keep going back to that was like a drum machine and a blip and 6 minutes straight down, and you would have that would have never been made if it would have been through the lens of like, how can I make a career out of this? And I think you don't go play basketball at the park being like, how can I make a career out of this? You love it. You do it because you love it. And if something ever comes from it, then great. But the ability to monetize techno is very loosely connected to my love for techno, I guess.
I tried the basketball thing. It didn't work.
Didn't work for me either. Had to become a DJ.
You work at Zalando? That sounds like a lot of pressure as well, like to make it, like to live from your art. Like, what challenging situations have you been through over the last years?
COVID. Having months where you go without gigs. Like having really especially that need to build these kind of clusters of hype, I call them, where it used to be you could have these one singular moments that could break you into that next level of things. But now you really need to constantly you need to have these important gigs, and you need to have all kinds of different pockets of things that people are talking about all at the same time, working together. And that's it's difficult to do that. So I always say, especially, I mean, coming from the US, we don't have quite as many vacation days as you do in Germany or the rest of Europe. Like, you've got 5 weeks of vacation time at your day job, guaranteed. That gives you a lot of latitude to be an artist, and if you can hold on to financial security as long as you can before, I always say, don't quit your job until you absolutely have to, until it's really getting in the way of what you're doing as an artist.
How long did it take for you to live from your art?
I mean, I don't know if I do, but it was really a forced situation where I had to move to, most of the gigs were happening in Europe. So I had to basically cut off all financial opportunities in ways other than techno to come over here. And it wasn't the best idea in the first couple of years, you know? I got really lucky with a couple opportunities that kind of got me back up and running, and but it was difficult. I was not wearing Rolexes during that time.
Now you are. Yes.
Nah, yeah. Sticking with my.
Olivia?
I mean, it's a lot of effort. It's a lot of digital presence as well. Being able to work with the new tools, being aware of the new technology, the new trendy technologies that could also make you stick to the scene, because now everything is digital. So yeah, once again, the consistency, and there's always like periods where there's less gigs and you're losing your confidence. You're like, okay, what is going on? People don't like what I'm doing anymore. You're asking a lot of like existential questions. And sometimes there are months where everything is going super well. So it's also, I think, a way to control your ego, because there's always an ego to manage in this. Because when there's a lot of gigs, you are feeling comfortable, and maybe you're not going to put that much work into your things. And then when things start to slow down, you're like, oh my God, I need to like push it, to do things, make myself, diversify myself, or making myself being seen as someone who's involved in the scene and in the community. But what I'm telling myself, actually, when I have less gigs, is trying to be grateful and just be like, okay, I'm going to take that time to make some music, working on my label, working on other projects that maybe if one day I'm going to start playing every weekend, I won't have that time to do. And yeah, trying to find like these moments, take it as an opportunity to that, just like working on other projects and keeping it up, having faith, and usually it comes back. If you share things that are meaningful to you, people will resonate to you, and then they will understand that you have your place where you are, like you have your place in the scene.
I want to ask you, may I ask what brought you to Germany from the US? Because we were talking about this, if that's okay.
Yeah. Oh man, this is funny that I'm talking to you about this, because at the time I was with, and I don't have hard feelings about this, but I was with Kinetic at the time, and which now became Triangle, and anyways, that's not the point, but I was working with Kinetic, and I came over for some gigs and said, let me know if you as an agent can handle this. I mean, because that's putting an agent under a lot of stress to be like, okay, this person's moving with with their partner and other people, and I was like, please tell me if it's not going to work, and I won't be offended. And at the time, it felt like it was okay to go. And then I remember there was they said, hey, we've got great news. We picked up Jeff Mills as an artist. And I said, well, that's great news for you. I don't know if that's great news for me. And so my profile was really floundering as an artist at that time, and they needed to make some changes at the agency. And I basically was cut from the agency, and one-way tickets had already been purchased. And so you really, like, I jumped from a bunch of different agents at that time, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just the way that things were. And, but if I didn't go in both feet forward, then I don't, on one hand, I'm saying keep your day job, but on the other hand, I also understand that I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I had done that. So basically all my advice is bad, but yeah, no, that's how we came over. And in Germany, when you're coming outside of the EU, you have to actually move to Germany before you get granted a visa, which seems odd, but so we moved over here and had to tell them that I was gonna be this promising DJ at the Ausländerbehörde, and they bought the line, and the rest is history. So,
But you stayed. So
yeah, 11 years, and still works.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's a good story, but what happens when you have a crisis situation? This doesn't work when they're in a relationship between an agent and the artist. Did you face this kind of situations?
I think this usually doesn't happen overnight. So it's something that evolves, I would say, perhaps from both sides. Sometimes it happens that interests or goals change, and like past just move apart from the values that you had initially, maybe mutually together, which can absolutely happen in careers. I think if there's transparency, like there shouldn't be a reason this happens overnight. So this is, like it comes, and then in the best case scenario is something that is mutually agreed, and you just like, you also generally you don't move on overnight. Like it's a process. But sometimes also, of course, there can be a crisis between the work for some, personal reasons, or there's all type of reasons. And sometimes you manage to go through it together, and sometimes not. I mean, it's a very personal business. I think it can't be forced. If you try to force that, I feel maybe it wouldn't work out in the long term. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Thank you. And how do you protect your brand, like on both sides, and as an agency and as a DJ, like on the long term, like how do you evolve around this?
It's very hard to protect your brand because the booker is the one who's representing you. So it's very hard to have control of how he's going to represent you with the promoters, except if you're getting some strange feedbacks from a promoter, or you can feel a little bit of tension when you go to a gig and you try to figure out what is going on. On my side, I never had a problem with Tim. They always found him very professional and very available. But yeah.
I think, it kind of goes back to being in a position to say no to things. And that is often pegged directly to finances. So if you have a a full schedule and everybody wants to book you, you can say no to a lot of things. You can say, nope, I don't like that font on that flyer. I don't like the artwork on this. Yeah, and you can protect that in a lot of ways. Like, there's been times where I've had to play parties that, like, to be honest, it looked like a McDonald's coupon on the flyer, you know, like, and so you're kind of at the mercy when you're at a certain tier where it can be really hard to present yourself in a way while still paying rent. And sometimes it involves, like, you have to look at things on a longer term vision if you're capable of saying no, even if it requires some to sting a little bit financially, to be like, no, I don't want to play that party. And people are going to say, well, why, you know, you don't have a single gig this month. Why are you saying no? Are you crazy? But if it's not something that you really believe represents you, then sometimes you have to make those decisions if you can. And you can't always do that.
I will tell you a secret. I am a graphic designer, and designing poster for parties was always a big thing, but also like so difficult. Do you blame, do you have a check on graphic design on the posters and all that?
In terms,
do you check, like he was saying, like, hey, this looked like a McDonald's ticket?
Well, I mean, we check, of course, we ask for the artwork before it's been published. But sometimes you can't tell the promoter, I mean, you can tell them, I don't think it's appropriate, but you can't not allow them unless it's a really mispresentation where if the promoter would refuse to change it, then you could say, okay, I don't think it's the appropriate event for my artist to play. So this is the protection that I would do for the artist, let's say. The presentation should be correctly, and but I mean, if it's semi-appropriate and then you just like, it doesn't look good, okay, then just don't promote it as much on your socials, and then maybe the party is good. Yeah.
And sometimes you have some posters where your name is so tiny that nobody can see it. Like, it happened to me where it was even blurry, and I was like, wow, okay, we need to say something about that, because it's so much not respectful for the artists who are part of the event, you know, like the headliners in big and then the rest in small. And for me, it's like, it's a no-go. And I'm telling, that's why I'm going to my booker and I will tell him, you have to tell them to change it. Or I go straight to the promoters and I'm like, guys, what is that? Like, we're in 2023 now. Like, it's not like, yeah, it's, for me, it's a bit living in the past where you have like big headliners and like name droppings. And, but I see less and less of a visual like this, I gotta say. It happened a few times at the beginning, like 8 years ago. But I fought for it, and they understood, and they changed the visuals. And also regarding the crisis with the management, the subject you were dropping, I don't know, but in my case, with Tim, he knows that I am the one who has the last word. So if he would say it's benefit for you to play there, but there are these tricky parts and this and that, he always gives me space to think about it. And if I don't want to do it, even if he's even if he would prefer me to play, I really appreciate the fact that I am the one who has the last word. And if I say no, then it's not gonna happen. So, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, totally. But I think it would be my responsibility or ours as agents, to do as much research as possible to give the artist all facts so they can make their decision whether this is something they would like to do or not, or because it's also hard when you agree on it and then you figure out in the end. I mean, it can happen, but it shouldn't happen too often because it's about transparency also from promoters to agents, sometimes about also involving sponsoring, branding, for example, and discussing artworks, of course. So the exchange between promoter, agent should be almost the same between agent and artist, so they can make the decision, and the final decision should be with the artist. I do think though sometimes if artists, for example, would decline a lot of shows, but they were good, maybe then the only thing that you could do is just like give them the suggestion that it would be good to do either or in a long-term perspective, because we think for at least like the next year, saying if you play that could have a positive effect on, another show, which is something then they can make their consideration.
What kind of researches do you do about the promoters you're sending your artists to?
Online links, event links, who has played for them in the past, artworks also, like artist presentation, and things like that, communication, what did they produce in the past,
And for the promoter listening to us, what would be like the don'ts or like things that would be to have to be careful about?
What's that question?
A no-go, for example. For example, as a booker, then you would say like, hey, I wouldn't recommend you to play at that party, for example.
I don't think you can give that answer. I think if I would see that there maybe had artists played that I don't think the artists I represent would like to play with, maybe, but even that, maybe it's a different night. Maybe political statements could be something, but generally it's really case to case decision. Like, let's say there is a bigger production and I feel maybe they don't have enough experience. That could be a reason, but like a no-go,
Politics plays a huge role nowadays. Like we will not go deeper into this, but like would this kind of decision from some like promoters, like parties, have an effect on your decision as an artist and as an agent?
Sure. If you don't align with the political views, then it doesn't make sense. And this could be also part of the conversation you have with your booker when they present you an event. They are also aware of like, okay, they could be pro this party, political party. I let you think about it. Do you align with their views? And it plays a key role actually. For me, if I don't align politically with the venue, I wouldn't play there. I wouldn't perform.
And do you have to pronounce yourself about everything online?
What do you mean?
To give your opinion about all the political teams that are happening nowadays?
Well, it's a good tool. No. No, I don't think. I think if you're not informed on a topic, then I think that you're actually saving the people that are looking onwards at you. If you don't know anything about, the financial crisis happened in 2008. Like, imagine if you told every DJ that you've got 48 hours to make a statement about how to get out of a recession, how to fix the subprime lending crisis, and all of this stuff. And you're like, you need to make a statement on this. Like, I think we need to focus more on having conversations about topics versus making statements about topics. And that's just maybe all my gigs are canceled after saying that, but I think like that's something I loved about the Twitch community and Discord, is that you can actually like have conversations about topics instead of this like megaphone and hoping that it's received well and then it gets so I think it's good to make statements about things that you're connected to, that you're informed on, and that you really believe in. And I'd never say don't take on something because it's too controversial or something like that. But this idea that it's better to make an uninformed statement on a situation than to be silent, like, I disagree with that. Sorry.
I think it's very, very pertinent, and I do totally share your opinion, but I'm also like personally like with the platform right now, with me being a tattoo artist, like very careful about what I do promote on my side, because like I want to promote like the best content about what we do in a club culture. But when I see what's happening all around the world, I'm just like not as informed as I would like to be able to give a clear opinion. And then I saw different people, a few DJs as well, saying like, hey, if you're silent, you're a traitor, or like you should be ashamed of not saying anything and that. And I was just asking myself, like, I do not feel like that, and I will not. And that's why I was asking this question.
I am a bit political, actually. But
Yeah, but I think it's good, like, to support a community.
yeah, I mean, for me,
help.
like, for instance, inclusivity and diversity is something political, and that's something I'm openly fighting for. And that's something that I believe I have a knowledge on, because I have a collective running and being connected with a lot of like different FLINTA communities. And I do believe that even at my scale, I have a certain influence on the people who are following me. And if there is a way to educate them and share some valid information, of course, and share the good, the optimistic things happening in the industry, which is like more inclusivity, more diversity in general, I think it's good to spread a good message and to educate also the people, the community. But as you say, you also have to have a full control of what you're going to say, and having like valid sources. But there are also some things that are quite common sense and everyone can observe it. And I think it's good to talk about that and make things moving forward, especially with the scene that has been kind of like stagnating for a long time into this kind of patriarchal system. So, yeah.
Like, as an American, the Trump situation was a very passionate. Let me finish my sentence. I was very passionately against the whole Trump thing, and I probably watch way too much and read way too much U.S. news, political news, and so I thought I had information on it. But honestly, I when I talked about the election, I wasn't talking to the techno scene, because most people in techno don't vote for Trump. It was people from my hometown that have followed me from the years, that know that I tour as a DJ, and hopefully that maybe those people would hear a counterpoint, because most of the people from where I'm from are Trump supporters. And so it also needs to be a winsome type discussion, where if I just tell them they're crazy psychopaths for voting for Trump, then they're just gonna mute and move on. And I think that there needs to be more massaging of issues to win people over, to show them a better way of how to approach things. So
It's good also to approach things in a more positive aspect, like the improvement that you can observe and how you can go further into that direction, for instance.
Katty, do you have anything to add?
No.
Great.
good idea.
Perfect. So now back to the happy subject. What advices would you give Olivia to find the right agency?
Give to who?
Fine. Yes. How? Yeah. As an artist with a lot of experience, what kind of tips would you give to younger artists to become as successful as you've been?
I would say do your own book. I would say do your own bookings. Like, for a lot of reasons, like doing your own bookings has so many advantages until you get to a place where you can't facilitate that. Like, there's certain artists at a certain place that it makes no sense for these A-listers to be doing their own bookings. There needs to be distance between the promoter and the artist, and there needs to be somebody managing all of this stuff. But if you're getting started, I have a lot of times people are like, man, I need an agent. I'm like, why do you say that? What do you think an agent is going to do? Because unless they're in the mob, like they can't force people to book you. There's maybe occasionally you have this joker card in your back pocket where you've got a really good relationship as an agency with a club or something. But if someone doesn't want to book you, they don't want to book you. And you can, it's very valuable to get that instantaneous feedback of hitting up a promoter and not having them respond. Like, that's a response, and you can archive that and understand. You have a much more instantaneous feedback of what you're doing. To, like, when I was doing my own bookings, I knew 100% that every lack of booking was my fault. Like, and that's a very valuable tool to have that you can move. So I would say do your own bookings for as long as you can, and you'll know when it's time, because agents will start writing you. If you're a really marketable talent, people are going to be contacting you. I don't know if you would have a lot more to add to that than.
I think it makes sense. Probably the question is, what do you expect, and why do you want to have an agent? Like I always say, like, if I was an artist, so I would give the suggestion to say, okay, make a list for yourself. Like, what's your expectations, and where do you see yourself, and what is important for you? Because maybe what is important to you guys is not important to the person asking. So is it communication? Is it financials? Is it a sustainable career? Do you want to have a quick career? Because I think depending on that, it's also deciding on who you reach out to, because every agency represents different values and has different strategies. As you see, like on the roster, on the artists, they represent, like, often artists join agencies or would like to join an agency where they feel close to the artist already on the roster, because they maybe can, collaborate, they feel well represented in their values. So I think it's a question, there's like the question, you have to ask yourself a lot of questions before reaching out. And also, what can I offer to the agency or to the agent, because it's not just coming all from them. It's working together. It's a mutual relationship. So maybe I have something really interesting, or maybe I feel what I do is interesting enough, but I feel you should really feel that you're looking to work together with someone.
I mean, I started without an agency, and it's an agency that came to me, and so they came with a proposal of how they can push some opportunities. And for me, the thing I was gaining out of it is the fact that I was like playing in the same circle of clubs, and I wanted to expand myself, like reach new audiences, and knowing that the booker has like a strong connection with a particular scene was also motivating me to work with that person. Because during the proposal, he told me what could be the opportunities he could bring to me. I'm saying he because it's my booker, is a man, but it's there what they can. Yeah, like it's about setting short-term goal and like sharing a vision and like understanding each other and like trying to figure out how you can both grow together. Because it's beneficial for the both of us. So, but I agree with you. Now you have all of the tools to be able to manage yourself, promote yourself. Everything is accessible. And at some point, probably if you're doing the thing right, you might gonna have people who's gonna come and like do proposals to you and try to show you that, convince you that there are some opportunities that you can get through them that you might not have access to now because you're not necessarily connected to these people yet.
Yeah, maybe it's a network that you should also look for. Like if you aim for a certain network, maybe that you feel you can't access without like a third party, or maybe opportunities, professional contacts that you can get if you are represented by an agency. But it's great if you do it yourself, because then also you understand, if you do it first yourself, because then I think you understand better what the other side does and what tools they need to work successfully.
And it's a good way to situate yourself in the scene. You know where you are because you're doing it yourself. So, and you know also what you need as well to make a push.
And I agree with what Katty said early on, that you really need 6 to 12 months with an agent to know if it's working. And that's a very realistic, but also a very critical amount of time, that things move very fast. Like you can have an artist that's making a 6-figure income, and then in 3 years their gigs are completely dried up. So 12 months, and the music industry is very critical. And if you're doing your own stuff when you're still at that lower level, you can react a lot faster. You can react a lot faster to if something's working or if something's not. And there's also just sheer economic incentives. If you're making 500 euro as an artist, that's because you're not in super high demand. The agent's getting 15% of that. So then they're having to work super hard to get 15% of 500, while they've got artists on their roster that have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 euro fees, and those are incoming emails a lot of times. So the incentives for you can't realistically expect an agent to treat those incentives like anybody else. It just makes sense that they would spend more time with the higher grossing artists. So yeah.
That's why it's really making sure that the music you do really resonate with them, and they really believe in you and they want to push you. Because you can really, there are moments of silence where you are actually questioning yourself as an artist if your booker is really pushing it. And as you say, time can be kind of critical. If there are like momentums, trends that are coming and you need to catch them, because otherwise you just see the trend passing. So yeah.
But then at the same time, if you see it this way, maybe it's not the right agent, because I think if I sign an artist, or we sign an artist that brings in 500 euros, we really believe in what they do. So the work that you as an agent, the work that you have to invest is different than with just like taking incoming requests. So it's an invest from both sides. And that's why I mentioned earlier, I feel communication is like super important, like especially in the beginning. If you could just give like updates every week, every 2 weeks, so everyone knows where they are standing. Because if you realize nothing happens already after 2-3 months, maybe either you change strategy or you already take the decision. Because if you wait for 12 months as the start of your career, like you said, it can be a risk for both sides, for the artist probably more than for the agency. It's just a financial question. But and you wouldn't rush to make a decision to go with an agency. Like you really have to feel that you trust, because it's your career.
Thanks a lot. Is there any questions left? Thanks a lot for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the talk.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well.